All right, welcome back to another tutorial in Maya. Today, what we're going to look at is taking a two-dimensional logo and actually creating a 3D version of that two-dimensional logo. Okay? And we're going to do that with curves, and we're going to do this inside of Illustrator and bring it back into Maya. Technically, you can do this inside of Maya, so there's really no problem there. You just create a Bezier curve. But sometimes in terms of flexibility, I like to use Illustrator, and this is a real useful thing to know. Just sort of the ins and outs of working with curves and creating them in Illustrator and bringing them over into Maya and doing some motion work. So anyway, that's that. So let's take a look at what's happening right now in this scene. Just let me give you a quick breakdown to show you what we're going to be doing. I'm going to switch back to my perspective camera, and you can see where, essentially I just have some shapes that were created by curves, and, nothing too big, but essentially sometimes you might need to bring a 2D logo into the 3D world, so that's what I have going on here. You'll notice that I have this bevel applied, and I created an object and created a bend deformer to sort of deform this text around a semicircle. So nothing too big there. Let's take a look at the outliner real quick, and I'm going to show you what happens when you bring Illustrator curves into Maya. First of all, in this case, I have a group of curves, and that represents all of the curves inside of here. Right now I have them hidden. That's why they're sort of semi-gray. Now, I also did a bevel plus, and as a result of that, I come up with lots of little beveled surfaces that I've actually named, just so I can keep this straight, because sometimes you want to actually keep organized before you get going too far. And so these are all of the different names for the inside and outside of these objects right here. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in Illustrator just quickly, just so you can get an idea of what's happening. All of these shapes were created by curves, and if I go over into Illustrator, here was the 2D logo, and it's just Monster, popular energy drink, sip responsibly. Okay, unleash the beast. I like Monster. So anyway, there you go. That's the logo, and we're going to create curves for all of these individual sort of shapes, or vectors, or whatever. So anyway, let me turn on my I'm going to turn that off right here, and we'll turn on the curves. These are essentially the curves that I have going here, that I actually did with this with the old pen tool here in Illustrator. And you'll notice that there's let me get a little up on that. In some of these cases, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 curves involved in one letter. So those are going to be what we're going to make. I'm going to show you how to use the pen tool real quick, and then we're going to bring this back into Maya and do some beveling and stuff. So right now I can see where I'm going to have trouble. Basically, in our file right here, if I select this, this curve or this path, you can see right there where it isn't connected. It's not closed. So let's get up on that a little bit more. Right in there, it's not closed. Well, we can close this in Maya, and I didn't do it here, so I just wanted to kind of show you that as we bring this into Maya. Okay? So there it is. We're going to be creating some curves like this in Illustrator and bringing them into Maya. Now, I have just a logo here from GJ2. This is the legendary guitar maker Grover Jackson, and they're a client of mine, so this is their logo I sometimes have to work with. And in this case, we're going to cut out this J with the pen tool, and I'm going to show you how to make a curve in Illustrator real quick like. I'll go ahead and select my pen tool, and you'll notice over here that the stroke color is at black and the fill color is at white. Well, that's really annoying, because when we go to make our curve, the first thing we want to do is create a layer, and there's our layer right there, our new layer. And if you don't have your appearance on right here, you can find that under your window, and appearance. So you're going to need to activate that and get this going. Okay, so first things first, let's select our pen tool and see what happens when we just leave this appearance with our stroke at black and our fill at white. I might want to just, randomly select a point to click on. So I'll click there, and I'll set another anchor point right there, and I'll pull. I'll hold down and I'll pull a little bit. And you can see where, if you're holding down on your left mouse button and pulling that handle a little bit, you can get, kind of a curve shape. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it right like that. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to set another one. And I might want to just curve it a little like that. Maybe come over here. Let's see if we do that. And you can see where, as I'm laying down curves and stuff, it's starting to block off this object. And we don't really want that because I want to see kind of where my curve is going, and I don't need it to mask off the inside or anything like that. And that's a result of the stroke and the fill up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and delete that layer that I just created. I'll drag and drop it to the trash, and I'll create a new layer. All right, and that's my layer 2. And I'm going to select the pen tool, and in this case I'm going to change the stroke, because that's the color that's going to be around the object. Now, if I click on this, color icon right here and hold down the Shift key and click again, I can go ahead and choose a stroke color. So in this case, I might just choose green, okay? We'll make it so that we can see it, and that's good. And our fill color, I'm going to go ahead and click on there, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click again, and I'm going to choose none over here. And then that way it won't fill with any kind of color. So now, if I go ahead and start selecting points here, I'll go ahead and just click once there to set an anchor point, and I'll come down here, and I'm going to click hold with the left mouse button and just sort of try and pull that into shape. And the more practice you do this with, the better you'll get. So anyway, I went ahead and set a point there. And in this case, I'll go down here and I'll set another one right here. Click, pull a little bit, try and get it to match the shape I was just on. And for the most part, you may be going back and forth with deleting some of these anchor points. A lot of times I'll run into situations where I click, I drag, and I get something weird like that. Okay, you can see where that's weird. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just, Command Z and undo those. And in this case, I can go ahead and select an anchor point and push down on the Option button. It might be Control if you're on a PC, I'm not sure. But anyway, go ahead and click that anchor with the Option button down. And now we kind of have a little bit clearer path here, where if I click on another point, I can go ahead and select that area, and I can kind of get rid of the handles that are on there. So I'm going to Option click the anchor, come down here and do the same thing, and just try and get it into shape. I'm going to go ahead and Option click there, and now my anchor point is a little bit out a little further. So I'm just going to Command Z that. I'll Command Z again, and I'll go from this last anchor point, and I'll click down here, maybe like right in there, pull, and right mouse or left mouse pull, and just sort of make that shape. And I'll go back to this anchor, Option click that, and then keep doing the same thing all the way around. I do a lot of Option clicking because sometimes these handles get in the way, and so you get the idea. You're going to have to practice with this quite a bit in order to get good, clean, smooth lines and curves. So I'll just sort of add a few more around the tight areas, and I'll just Option click. So anyway, that's kind of how you do the curves. So I'm gonna click, pull, let up, Option click that anchor, and keep on working all the way around. Okay, so that's a quick explanation of this tool and how it's used. Now, let's just say, for example, I go ahead and go ahead and finish off this J right here. I'm just going to randomly put some stuff down here. I'm not going to be too clean about it, just to show you something. Okay, so once we get, up to a point where we want to close or say move to a straight edge, I'm going to go ahead and option click that, and then just move straight down, click, and then straight down and click, and then come over here. And as I come over onto this anchor point, you'll see a small little circle appear by the tool there, by the icon on the tool. And right there you don't see the little circle area, but there you do. So that means we're going to close this curve. So I'm going to go ahead and click on there, and that's going to close the curve. So if I just select this now, you can see where that's pretty much our stroke. And if we take the stroke, you can sometimes adjust this to something better that you can see it a little better with. Okay, so there you go. That's just creating a simple curve in Illustrator. So practice with that a lot, because this is really a good useful thing to know. All right, so anyway, once you get done with that, you can go ahead and save this. But what you want to do is you want to save this as something like, we're going to save it as whatever. It's going to be an Adobe Illustrator file. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And when it asks you for the version right here, it's really important to kind of keep in mind that Illustrator 8 is generally the best option for saving this. Later versions of Illustrator don't really work too well with Maya. I don't know why that is. I mean, there's a lot of changes and things that go through here. But anyway, Illustrator 8 will usually give you, great reliability. Okay? So go ahead and save that, and you're good to go. Okay? So let's go back over into Maya here and take a look at the curves I created for, I believe I created curves. Nope, that's Camtasia. Don't need that. Let's hit Maya. All right, so I created some curves for Maya. I'll go ahead and just go back to File, and I'm going to save that scene, and I'm going to open a new scene. All right, and I'll go ahead and save that. So now I have a new scene going here, and I'm going to go ahead and import. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can import Illustrator files. You can come to Import and go ahead and click on this box right here and get your options. And in this case, if I'm importing an Illustrator, I might want to think about, changing my file type up to Adobe Illustrator. But if I do, and I hit import, you'll see where it says, it doesn't want to do it, that this object is not found. Now, I don't know if this is a bug in Maya or just, cross-compatibility of files, but it's annoying. So anyway, if I switch to best guess and go ahead and hit import, that'll bring up a window where I can go ahead and choose that file, that Illustrator file, and open it. Okay, and a lot of times what happens is they come in all over the place. They might not come out near the grid, so you have to just kind of look and see where that is. A lot of times, it might be hiding. You'll open something up and you won't see it here. So just remember to scroll back a bit and take a look around the scene. Okay, so there's our curves, and I'll go ahead and click on that. I'm going to open this up. You can see where these are now grouped. There's a group of curves. If I select the group in the outliner, there's all of my curves, which is cool. So let's take a look at this. But before we do this, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this group of curves that we brought in, and we're going to import this a little bit differently. I'm going to come over here into Create, and I'm going to do the Create Adobe Illustrator Object, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my options right there. And right away you'll get two options. You can either do curves or a bevel. Well, in this case, I'm going to choose bevel and show you what happens. I'm going to choose bevel, and I'm going to hit Create. All right, and I'm going to grab this file, these curves, and I'm going to bring them in. And right away I get a failed to create bevel output. And that's because these curves have a lot going on with them. They're fairly complex. If it was just a single curve, it would probably import. but because it's multiple curves and it doesn't really know how you want to bevel those, it's not going to do it that way. So you might want to go back and do Create, Illustrator Object, go ahead and hit your options, and switch back to curves and go ahead and hit Create. And then you can choose your Illustrator file and you can open. And there they are. Okay, but now you can see in the outliner that these are now Illustrator curves and they're showing up as compound curves. Well, it's really no different than just a regular curve, but in this case, they just show up as compound curves, and there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of select all of them. I'm going to bring them up a little bit here and bring them over a little bit. We'll kind of get them over by the grid. Okay, so there it is. Now, the first problem I'm going to notice, which is what I was talking about when we were in Illustrator, was that this curve right here is not closed. So you want to make sure you look at all your curves when they come in and make sure that you don't have something like this happening, because that right there can wreak havoc. Okay? So make sure you're in your Surfaces menu set, and to fix this, all you have to do is come into your Edit Curves, and we're going to close that curve, and you'll see it automatically closes that curve, which is good. Okay, so that's one problem that will really throw you for a loop sometimes. So there we go. Now, next thing we got to look at is a lot of times when you bring curves in, especially with a lot of different types of they're raggedy, okay, and they're going to produce aliasing. So a lot of times when you come in to do a render, you'll notice that your edges and things like that look a little raggedy. And that's because we need to take these curves right here, and I'm going to show you what happens. Let's keep an eye on this curve really closely, okay? Because I'm going to come into Display and go to NURBS, and we're going to go to Fine, okay, and select that Fine. And when I do that, watch what happens to that curve, okay? You may or may not be able to see this very well on YouTube, but it just smoothed out that curve quite a bit. And that'll help with anti-aliasing, okay? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these curves, these Illustrator curves right here, and I'm going to bring them down here. Let's see if we get a better view on them. And I'm going to go to Create, Display, NURBS, and we're going to go to the Fine selection. Okay, so that just applied sort of like a fine tuning to all of our curves, which is cool. So we're well on our way to creating a 3D logo here. So let's select this one first right here, and that's our curve 1. And I'm going to go ahead and go to, let's see, I'm going to go to my Surfaces. We're going to go to Bevel Plus and go ahead and hit that Bevel Plus option. And sometimes when I'm doing this, I just like to reset the settings and go ahead and hit Bevel. Okay, and that's going to actually bevel it, and there you go. Okay. I'm going to take off my high quality rendering and stuff. We can just look at this. Yeah, and there it is. Okay, you can see where it beveled it out a little bit. Now, that's the Bevel Polygon 1. It just created, a new object from this curve. So here's your actual object. So I might want to label these as I go along, and I'll just put this as Claw 1 or something. Okay, that way when I go to select these things, I know what they belong to. And, you could also label this curve right here the same thing, or, whatever you want to do with that. But anyway, that's our new claw shape. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this and maybe just move it out of the way a little bit. You can see where we still have the original curve, and then here is, the object. Now, one thing that we're really concerned with here as we get started is the object itself. You can see over here we have the Bevel Plus 1 that we applied in the attribute editor here in our tabs. So if you want to mess around with the bevel width, I'm going to bring this a little closer here so we can see what's going on. Okay, bevel width, if I set this down, I can go down in size. It'll start to go into a negative number and sort of recess itself. Or I can bring it out to, make it out like that. In this case, I think I'll just do a bevel of 0 and make it completely flat. Okay. Now, that's good, but sometimes you might notice that it gets a little raggedy around the edges. I'm going to do a quick render right now. I'll save that image. I'll do a render, and I think I'll switch up to, high quality. I'll bring up my render settings here and do quality, and we'll get out of draft, and we'll do, say, like production mode. And in my common area, I might want to set that up to 720. All right, and there we go. So let's do another render. And that should look a lot better. And, we don't have any lights in the scene right now, so that's no big deal. But sometimes you need a little bit smoother look around the edges. Let's say we want to smooth these out a little bit. What you can do is you can go down into your polygon output options, check on your sampling, and look at your curve span. Right now it's set at 6. And I'm going to bring this down. We're going to set this curve span up a little bit more. So I'll bring it up to, like, say, 22. Yeah, we'll go up to 22 or whatever. Okay? So that just gave me a lot more resolution and clarity on that, that curve. So let's see what we get there. And there we go. So I'm going to save that one, and we'll do a comparison. There's the old one right there, and there's the new one. So in this case, just adding more spans doesn't really help me smooth this out, which I don't really want to do anyway. So you be the judge at what you need there, and that's just where you're normally going to find that. You can also, set your extrusion sections up a little bit. Those are the little guys around the side here, and we can see that a little better by bringing up our bevel width a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. All right. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so the extrusion sections, we'll go ahead and bring those up. And anyway, that's one way to sort of increase your resolution, so to speak, or the clarity of the line. All right. So there it is. All right. Now, I'm going to basically, I'm going to just delete this for the moment because I don't really need that yet. What I want to show you is down here a quick technique for taking, two curves. So you pick your outer curve first and then pick the inner curve and come up to your surfaces and again apply the bevel plus. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'll go to edit and reset the settings, and I'll just hit bevel tool. All right, well, you can see where, it did its thing, it beveled it, but I may want to switch that bevel up by coming over here into the bevel plus 1 tab and just switch that back down to 0, just so I can kind of know what's going on with that. All right, well, that looks cool, and I do have that polygon. You might want to label this as, M outside or something like that as you create them, because it'll help with confusion later. So there's the M outside, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that and move it back a little bit. And now I think I can just grab this center section right here as a single curve and do the same thing. I can do the bevel plus, and I think I'll just set this at 0 inside of here, and I'm going to hit bevel. All right, well, there's my inside curve. Now, if I move this back, I can kind of place it directly inside of there, and it's sort of like a clean cutout where I can either have some relief or some recess going on with the look. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So all you need to do is pretty much do the same thing all the way down the line. I'm going to label this the M, we'll call it inside. All right, and there it is. Now let's come over here to this 0 or the O over here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll click on the outside and the inside, go to surfaces, and I'll just hit bevel plus. And because I left my settings, didn't change my settings from the last time, it just sort of remembers it. So that's great. I'm going to go ahead and move that out of the way. Then I'm going to create my inside. I'll click on there and click on that one, do surfaces, bevel plus again, and that's going to create a bevel. But you'll notice where, I left some of this other stuff in, so it didn't really, it didn't do what I thought it would do. So what we have to do is look at that real closely. I'm going to go ahead and just undo that bevel. And we're going to grab this other one over here. So First, if you have a compound thing like this, which is why sometimes it doesn't import correctly when you're using those import options like I showed you, I'm going to go ahead and shift click on these two, and now we can do the surfaces and Bevel Plus, and that gives us the piece that we're looking for there. So I'm going to go ahead and move that back into the center, and there we go. Then now let's work on the inside. I might want to grab this one and then the inside one here and do the same thing. Surfaces, and we're going to go to Bevel Plus, and there's our bevel. I'm going to select the outside of that one and select the inside and do the same thing. Bevel Plus. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and move those back. I think I'll do them as a group, so I'll edit, undo, move. I'll select both of these, and now I can just sort of move them back both as one there. All right. So there it is. So do that on some type of object that you're working on, and yeah, you'll get something that looks like that. Okay. So let's see. The next thing you can do, I'm going to go ahead and just open another file here. I'm going to open up my, we'll do the one that I just did. I'm going to hit Don't Save. Okay, so here is the object that I'm working with now. And how I did this is I went ahead and did what we were doing before, but you'll notice there's a bend deformer on here, and here's my bend handle. I'm going to bring that down to 0 for a moment and kind of show you what happens. There's the text, and when I apply a bend deformer to it, it kind of lets you, curve your text around a little bit like that. Let's see, I'm going to set this at 0 for the moment. And essentially what I did is after I got done extruding or beveling all of these and getting them in place, I went ahead and just selected all of those objects, all of those surfaces that I did, and I went up and went to the polygons menu set, and went to mesh, and then hit combine. And when you do that, when you hit the combine, it basically makes a full surface out of them. So it'll be just a continuous object. So that mesh is now, the mesh is now a continuous object. I'm going to go ahead and delete this bend deformer right here and show you kind of what happens. So once you combine this as a mesh, I went ahead and just selected the polygon surface, and then if you come up into your deformers, you have what's known as the bend deformer right here, nonlinear bend. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that assigns a bend, but it normally comes in on the y-axis, and that's not how we want it. We want it to be kind of going with our object. So I'm going to first sort of bend that over with our object, and I'm going to look over here in the in the channel box, and you can see where it's rotated on its Z 76 degrees. If I move that up a little bit, it'll switch to 83. Well, technically we want that to be at 90 degrees. So there's a good solid 90. And now, if you click on your attribute editor over here and select that bend handle 1, I'm going to go ahead and sort of bend it. Okay, well, it's not really doing what we want it to do right there. I mean, it's sort of bending up or down, which is cool if you need that. But I'm going to set that at 0. And let's look at switching this bend handle. I'm going to select this right here. And I want to rotate this handle so that it kind of bends for the correct position. So I might want to just bend this one up on this axis to, like, say 90. So that's the y-axis at 90. All right, and there we go. Now let's look at what happens with our bend. I'll go ahead and bend, and now I can kind of bend it along the right axes there, or the axis. Okay, so there it is. Yeah, quick way to make a 2D logo into a 3D logo. And yeah, so that ought to work. So now you have to think about what kind of motion you're going to put to your camera moves and to, you know, the text and to objects and things like that. And that's where the real fun begins. So the hard work is over. You've just converted a 2D logo into a 3D logo. Okay? So, hey, I hope that was good for your knowledge of creating logos. And there you go. As always, be a good person and read a book because they're good for your brain. All right? And thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And, yeah, have a good weekend making some logos. All right? Thanks, and we'll see you for the next one.